Hey everyone, I am Sequoia T. Gilliard, the editor-in-chief of Rejoicing Hope magazine. And today I have my sister, Miss Whitney Smith-Keith, who is a contributor to the magazine. We're going to be talking about the blessings and struggles of being a new mom. So welcome, Whitney.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm sleep deprived, but I've heard that's normal.
Trust me, I understand that. Trust me, I understand. Oh my goodness. So can you share a little bit about yourself with the viewers so they can get to know how awesome you are?
So I'm Whitney Smith-Keith. I've been married for about 2.5 years now. We have a son. His name is Gabriel. We both work at a hospital here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And we just try to take it one day at a time and live the best life that we can.
All right, awesome. Yay. Well, I would say I'm very interested in this topic. I'm not a mom, so I can't relate on the aspect of a mother, but I do desire to be a mom. So for me, I'm like, okay, so what is it like, after labor, being a new mom? But before we dive into all of that, can you share a little bit about your testimony of even becoming pregnant?
Yes. So when I tell people about my journey, I always start by telling them that I actually, that I actually waited for Gabriel for about 12 years, maybe a little more than that. And I'm only 30, so people are a little confused by what that means. But I was the girl that knew I wanted to be a mom, like as soon as they bought me my first doll, as a child. And so it was around my sophomore year in college where I started having issues with my cycle, and it wasn't coming on, and it went about a year of not happening, and that's a medical problem. And so I went through several doctors, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And so the doctor that I have now ended up diagnosing me with polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS for short. And it's a condition in which the chemical balance in your body is off. So your testosterone is higher than your estrogen. And so for a woman, that's not
Right.
a good thing. So for me, it was really an interesting experience because I remember watching a documentary about that, and thinking, like being really, worried that if that was something that were to happen to me, then that would cause infertility issues. And so with that being said, when they did tell me in the doctor's office that that was something that I had, that was the first question I asked. What does that mean for wanting to have kids? And being such a young age, being, 18, 19 years old, they're thinking you have a lot of time for that, and it was really a hard thing for me because the physician's assistant, that delivered the news to me was just kind of like, yeah, you may not be able to have kids. And she said it so expressionless. And it was just kind of like, okay, you're telling me, this very horrible thing, and you're saying it like you're saying, okay, I'm going to go up the street to McDonald's,
Right.
and it was very, it was like, I just felt so sad. And it literally, it also is a condition where instead of dropping the eggs every month, my body drops cysts, and they adhere themselves to my ovaries. And so they couldn't diagnose me because I didn't have the typical symptoms. And so they had to do an ultrasound, and they generally don't show up in ultrasounds, but mine did. And so you see what looks like holes, like maybe 20 to 30 on each ovary. And it's also painful. And so I got back to school. I had went home to go to the doctor, and I got back to school. I was at A&T. And I remember standing outside of the math building because there's a courtyard behind it, and there's a fountain. I was standing out there, and I was talking to God, and I was like, listen, I want kids. And so, and I was upset, and I was just like, what do I do? Because I'm not at that place in my life yet to have kids, but here I am already, and I've already been through so much in my life, and you're telling me that my body's not going to do what it was made to do. And so I refused to believe that. And I was like,
Yes.
no, I'm having some kids.
Right.
And so I remember just being in prayer about it a lot. And I started to have these reoccurring dreams. And in this dream, I had a daughter, and her name was Michaela. And Michaela means gift from God, or she who is like God. And these dreams were so vivid that I could tell you the way that she smelled.
Wow. Oh my
And
God.
so it was just like I kept, and after having them for such a long time, I went to my mom and I was like, do you think I'm crazy? I was telling her about it, and she listened to me and she talked to me about it, and she didn't tell me this at the time until years later, but she wrote down the name and the time and the date that I told her about these dreams and put it in a sealed envelope. And so fast forward to meeting my husband, and in a previous article, I did talk about meeting him on christianmingle.com and how God led us that way. God has been at work. I'm so thankful. But, meeting my husband, it was 2 months after meeting him on Christian Mingle when God confirmed that he was my husband. And of course, I was so deep into God at that point. I was trying to accept my life of singleness at that time, the season that I was in, that I was kind of taken aback. And I was like, you sure? Like I want to make sure, because this is the rest of my life that I'm talking about here. So he came to me one day, and he had said that he was in prayer for about 3 days. And, that he had this dream about this little girl. He said he was sitting in a kitchen in a place that he'd never been before. And there was a small bowl of cereal sitting across from him. And this little girl runs in, and she looked exactly like me. Now, this is before, we were married, before we were officially in a relationship. We were just quote unquote talking. So, it kind of solidified things for us, and things kind of started to move forward at that point. So when we got married, we had talked about kind of like a timeline of when we would think about it and think about having kids. And we agreed to about a year and a half in, to go and talk to my doctor and see what would be necessary. So we're thinking, like worst case scenario, we're thinking, I'm going to have to take shots or, have some treatments and stuff like that. And we go in, and she took me off the birth control, and like a month later, I was pregnant.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It was,
miracle.
yes.
Wow.
Yes, because I literally, I was in such a state of shock that I took like 4 pregnancy tests, I think. Throughout my pregnancy, like in the early stages before I was showing, I kept taking them because I was like, am I still pregnant? But like that first night, I remember I wanted to be sure. So I had gotten a 2-pack, and it comes with the electronic one, and then it comes with the one with just the lines. Well, I took that one, the one with the lines first, and it was such a faint line, and I'm like, I don't know. So I waited a week, and then I was sitting there, and then it popped up and it said pregnant 2 to 3 weeks or whatever, and that meant 2 to 3 weeks past ovulation, which was like 5 or 6 weeks pregnant. And I remember I just stood there for a second, and I was like, this is serious. Like, this says I'm getting ready to have a human. So I remember I walked out, like I had it all in my head, of a way that I was going to surprise him, a little cute way I was going to do it. But I was in such a state of shock that I just ran out, and he was in the kitchen cooking, and I just handed it to him, and he was like, you pregnant? And so then it began. I literally was sick from that moment on until I died.
Wow.
Yes, I ended up having to get on a medication called Diclegis, which basically helps you with nausea and all that. But I mean, it's been an amazing journey, just, waiting for something for so long, that literally, I was in labor for 18 hours, back labor. and they kept telling me, you got to go to sleep, you got to rest, you got to rest. And my contractions weren't typical. So I was 2 to 3 minutes apart my entire labor, which that's generally the time that they tell you to go to hospital.
Right.
So I really was confused. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. But when I finally got to the hospital, you know, they were telling me to rest and I just couldn't do it because I was like, I've been waiting for this. I've been resting for 12 years. And, you know, I'm going to stay awake for every moment. And it was really interesting because I literally, when he came out and they put him on my chest, I had a moment of pure terror. And it was just because I really was like, okay, this is a baby. And of course I wanted him and all of that stuff, but it was like, do I even know how to take care of myself? You know, and here I am with a human and I'm like, okay. So, but you know, it's interesting because I remember telling my husband, I was like, you're going to get, you know, he was due in May and he was due at the end of May. So he came early, but he was still considered a full-term size baby. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, it's not fair because you get to celebrate your first Father's Day and I'm not going to be able to celebrate my first Mother's Day because he was still going to be, you know, I was still going to be pregnant. And so I delivered him May 12th on a Friday. And then we went home on Mother's Day. And so even then, I feel like God was thinking about me, you know. And so it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Awesome. That is a phenomenal testimony. And I know it's an encouragement for women who are dealing with, you know, fertility issues and, you know, who are praying, you know, to get pregnant. Because I don't know, you know, that feeling, because I haven't traveled down that road, but I know that's a real issue for a lot of women. And you mentioned about your mother, you know, putting the name, you know, in the letter. So I wanted to know, like, what happened? Was the letter unsealed? And also with the dream with your husband, how did that coincide with the letter? I'm kind of curious now.
Right. So we were, because of those dreams, we were, you know, expecting Gabe to be a female, just, you know, automatically. Mm-hmm. And so the letter is still sealed because we have not had a daughter yet. But
wow. Okay.
But you know, I took it as, okay, you know, this was God saying, not necessarily saying that you're going to have a daughter and you have to name her Michaela, which is a beautiful name. But but it was, you know, God saying, I sign off on your life. You know, the doctors, you know, I gifted them with their knowledge and, you know, everything that they have to be able to help you in humanity. But I'm the one who will tell you what will and won't happen. And that's what I took from it. So, so the dream with my husband and I having kind of like the same dreams, God used that to confirm that he was my husband, you know, because God knows all of us inside and out. And so he knew that Whitney was going to ask like 50 times to make sure, because that's how I am. And so it's interesting because his sister's name is Kayla. And he has two sisters. I have a sister and a brother. And his two sisters are the same age as my sister and brother. And then, like I said, his sister's name was Kayla, and he named her when she was born. And so it was just all these little things that others would consider, you know, coincidences. And so it was just that all came together to add it, you know, into like the confirmation of our life together. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm definitely happy for you and your husband on your bundle of joy. And just, you know, to see the power of God working in both of your lives and, you know, just seeing how God, you know, brought you all together, which is another story for a different time. Because I'm like, wait a minute, Christian Mingle, hold on. But I want to transition just a little bit and, you know, ask you, you know, about the blessings of, you know, being a new mom. What are they? How was it like?
So I have a coworker at work who I was talking to the other day, and she was talking about her experience, and she was saying, you know, when she looked at her firstborn, which is a son as well, you know, she was like, I realized throughout my experience that this is the first time that you're going to be a mom. It's never going to happen like this again. So you're never going to be a first-time mom ever again. And I'm a really detailed-oriented type of person. And so a lot of, you know, my emotions and my life, my walk, you know, is through experience. So I tried very hard to live in each moment, even though I was sick, and couldn't eat what I wanted and all this type of stuff. You know, I just tried to soak up every piece of the moment. And so it's been really good. He was sick when he first, came home. So, there was moments of, being scared and things like that. But it's just been like indescribable, and I've never, other than to my husband, I've never wanted to run home to somebody every day, and pick him up and be like, "Where's my baby?" And we video chat on the Facebook chat. I taught my grandma how to use it. She teaches me. So I taught her how to use it and how to focus the camera so that I can say, "Okay, look to the left," So it's been really good. You don't get a lot of sleep, but it's something that's worth it. I'll stay up all night if necessary, and I spent probably my whole maternity leave, my whole 12 weeks, just staring at them. Because when babies first come out, they sleep a lot of the day,
Right.
and so there would be times where I would literally wake them up, like, play with me, like, look at me, I'm just, like. So it's been really, really good, and to have somebody, because children, they automatically know how to love unconditionally, and so when the Bible talks about conditional love, and when the Bible talks about in 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4-7, it talks about love is patience, kind, all of that. Children automatically exhibit that, and so they are actually some people that you can watch, to kind of you figure out how to get back to that once you're an adult and you're kind of jaded and all of that stuff. And so it's been an amazing experience because I look at him and I'm like, he is the perfect balance of everything good that I've ever done and everything good that my husband's ever done, and it's just wrapped up in a really cute package.
Oh my God, girl, look, that was so poetic. But I mean, you spoke, a lot of truth because, like you said, they love unconditionally. And that just made me think about, like you said, as adults, we get all of society's craziness, put on us, and it kind of skews, how we, interact with people, how we, love people. But going back to how God intended for love to be, like He's not expecting you to be perfect or anything. You don't have any expectations, but for mom and dad to love Him unconditionally, back the same. And I think it demonstrates the love that God has for us, and that as His children, that He just desires to love us unconditionally and for us to love Him back unconditionally as well.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, for pointing that out. And like you said, the good of all that you've done and your husband, that coming together. It's just so beautiful. Like, I'm like, oh man, but look, I'm not ready to travel down the motherhood road, but I mean, it's so beautiful. And
it is.
The opportunity to witness, the birth of one of my friends' sons years ago. And so I have somewhat of an idea of how, miraculous it is, because birth itself, labor itself is like, oh my gosh, it's a beast. So for you to go through all of that to deliver this small human being into the world, I mean, it's nothing short of a miracle within itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that you and your husband, had the opportunity of experiencing that. And then you also, basking in, the moment of, this is the first time, that you ever experience, ever again being a first time mom. Like, wow. Like that's something that's huge.
It is.
Like, oh snap, this is never going to happen again, being a first time mother. So just you wanting to spend time with him, even when he's trying to sleep, and when you probably should let him sleep, but
and be asleep as well.
Right, but you wanted to, spend that time because you realize that this is what you have prayed for, that He's an answered prayer, to, that God has, sent to you and your husband. So yes, thank God for Gabe.
Yes.
Yes. So with all the blessings of motherhood, now we know motherhood is not pretty now. We know it's not all a bed of roses. So can you share with us some of the struggles that you face as a new mom, as a mom, and then also with you and your husband as a couple?
Okay. So first, I'll just explain a little bit since I already alluded to it in another question. So when we bought Gabe home, like I said, he was 7 pounds 14 ounces, which is a very good size.
Right. Yeah.
But he came almost 4 weeks early. So those last 4 weeks in utero is when a child is basically practicing for the outside world. So he didn't have any of that practice, and he was still developing a little bit. And so literally before we brought him home in the hospital, I breastfed him the first time he ate wonderfully, and then I couldn't get him to latch, and I really wanted so badly, to breastfeed, but I made sure that I also recognized that not every woman can do it, and that I shouldn't beat myself up about it. But he wouldn't eat. After that, he just wouldn't eat at all. And he didn't seem hungry. And, after a certain amount of time, they worry about the baby's blood sugars dropping. And so they asked if it was okay to supplement. Started just throwing up. Just during my contractions, like I stated before, my contractions were 2 to 3 minutes apart the entire labor. And they were so strong that the doctor that came in after my original doctor went home thought that they had induced my labor, because when they induce you, that contractions. And so he thought that they had induced my labor because they were so strong. And so during that time, Gabe was having hiccups. And so he ended up swallowing a lot of what's in there with him in utero. So when he came out, he just started throwing up a lot and choking. And so they didn't let him sleep in the room with us because he had to keep going to the nursery to be deep suction to keep him from aspirating. So set the hospital bassinet up at an angle to kind of make sure that if he did throw up, it would come out. Right. And, our home is not set up like a hospital. So we were like, okay, when we go home, what are we supposed to do? Because you're going to bring all your tools and stuff, because I don't know what I'm doing, and it's so different when it's your own. I've been in the medical field since 2007. And so, but when it's your child, it's like all the years of CPR and all that stuff, it was just kind of like, I don't remember the steps. What do I do? And so, so that was definitely one struggle. We went back to the doctor so many times. There were times where I literally just would start crying because I was so frustrated. I didn't know what to do, and I was scared. And then Chris was scared, because he was trying to let me get rest, but then he really didn't know what was going on, and how to help Gabe when he was choking. And so basically we ended up finding out about a month or so later that he had acid reflux. And I've never heard of that in a baby so young, which obviously is possible. But so they put him on meds, but the meds, is basically to keep it the acid from hurting him, from eroding his esophagus and the lining of his throat. So it doesn't keep him from throwing up. And so we switched milks so many times that I got frustrated, and because they wanted you to call and make sure, that they switched the milk. And I was like, no, we're going to pray about this. And I went to the pharmacy and I was like, So I researched it, and I found out that Enfamil had a formula specifically for babies that had acid reflux. It's called Enfamil AR. And I went to the pharmacy and bought it, and I was like, baby, your stomach's gonna work wonderfully. We're gonna drink this milk. It's gonna be nice. And so that's what he's been on ever since. And so that was like the first struggle, yes, that we had. And now he's so much better. But I would say that was like the main thing we were worried about at first. As far as other struggles, for me as a mom, I would say I struggled a lot with, with trying to figure out how to stand firm in my boundaries without hurting other people's feelings. But then if they were going to be offended and hurt, they were probably going to be offended and hurt anyway. And so still being able to stand firm in those things. Like, for example, I'm a particular person, and a lot of people say that it's because I'm a new mom, but I know it's just because of my personality. I don't want anybody kissing my baby.
Right.
unless it's me or Chris. I didn't want him, really going and spending the night anywhere unless absolutely necessary. I didn't really want to be far from him, and stuff like that. And so I think that was a really big struggle for me because you're trying to operate in the world with your new title, so you're
Right.
trying to figure all this stuff out for yourself. If everybody kind of just gave you 50 feet, and just kind of like lets you do your thing. But it doesn't work that way because, see, Gabe is the first grandchild for both sets of our parents, and he's the first
Oh,
great grandchild for my dad's side of the family.
wow.
So, and then on top of that, my family knowing, you know, um, the struggle that I had, and even before they knew Chris, and about our marriage and all that, knowing that I'd been praying for this child, and wanting this child and all that stuff. And so everyone was just super, super excited. And so, for me, it was just kind of like, okay, how do I say, don't touch my baby without saying
Right.
like, don't touch
Yeah.
and so it was those moments that was really a struggle for me, and like I said, setting the boundaries and sticking with them.
Mhm.
And then for Chris and I as a couple, we had instilled Friday night date nights when we got married as a way to to continue to be united, and intimate, and
Right.
not necessarily physically, but in a sense, of like being
Right.
emotionally close and that. And so we had done that at the beginning, and we still wanted to be able to have those moments. And so just trying to figure out, like being more spontaneous in the sense that, okay, he's napping, let's go watch a movie and talk about
Right.
it. Or this nap's probably going to last about 30 minutes. We can probably put him in the stroller and take him on a walk, but we can talk about us, kind of thing. And then also with, when we do go out somewhere and he's, away or we're away from him, not spending our whole entire time talking about him.
Oh,
Um,
that's
you know,
good. Good.
so, and just making sure, that we continue to put each other first, because how it's supposed to go is you're under God, your spouse is supposed to come first, and that is actually what works best for your child, because then you're here and you're keeping the foundation built, and it's what
That's
they
good.
learn from, and it's what they build on. And we're modeling for him what his relationship's supposed to look like. So he's looking at me and he's going to see, you know, how I was as a wife and a mother, and the same thing for his father. And so that was a struggle in the sense that not necessarily that we couldn't do it, but just in the sense that, everything is a work, and, when you've got distractions, you've got work every day and stuff like that. Especially when I went back to work, it was kind of like, my husband hanging out over here like, hey, I'm still here, still love you, and so just trying to, figure all of that out. And for me personally, making sure that I had a balance, because I did
Right.
wait for so long that I didn't want it to be like, this is my baby, and then
Right.
this, people call him like my baby, but, because he's a mama's boy, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. It was a partnership to create him. So, but
you're right.
yeah, a mom can be territorial at times, but we understand that it's your baby with you and your husband.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I'm so glad, that you shared your struggle, and I know that one struggle that you've dealt with too, that so many moms deal with, is also postpartum depression. So can you share a little bit about your experience with that?
Yes. So I'm trying to, I know it's okay for me to get emotional, but I want to be able to get through the video. So I was diagnosed with clinical depression in 2007. I went through a lot of stuff when I was in college. And so I had to come home for about 8 months and get some stuff together and go back so I could finish my degree, which I did in 2010. But um, you know, so you're more apt to have that struggle after you birth a child if you've already had depression. But that's not to say that you know, that someone who's never had this before will not deal with. Within itself, depression, but it generally it is characterized by coming up to a year after you deliver. So at any point in your first year of delivering, you can get postpartum depression, and it's generally, it could be a sudden onset, or you can notice it, like gradually. But definitely if you were, sitting at home and like yesterday you were totally fine and normal, and then today you feel like the world's on top of your doctor, and kind of try to, and talk to your support system and stuff like that. But for me, I I knew that it was a possibility, because of my previous struggle with depression. And so I really tried to, I sat my husband down and, I talked to him, and explained to him what it might look like, because everybody's depression looks different. And so, I explained it to him, and I kind of gave him some pointers as to how to support and like what to look for, because I'm a busybody too. So a lot of times, I can just be going, and and I don't even recognize, what's happening with myself. And so I started to recognize it probably, maybe about a week or so after we came home, because it was like I literally, I've had a lot of experience with children. I'm the oldest grandchild and child, in my family. So I've had a lot of experience with babies, but I was scared for him to go anywhere and not be sitting right there. Even though, initially I primarily had Gabe a lot because of trying to breastfeed and all that stuff. It was like I just needed someone to be sitting right there. And so that was like the first indicator to me, because I'm like, okay, like that's weird, because I like my alone time. And so I was very, like the first few months, your hormones are all over the place anyway, because your body's trying to get back to normal. And so I was very tearful. I was like, okay, like, what do I do? And so I had a mentor through the church at the time. So I talked to her about it, got some resources, and was fully ready to go. I even talked to his pediatrician about it, which they also, I like that they, cared about me as well, and so talked to her about it. And she was like, let me know if you think you're going to need medication or some extra help. I found some support groups, and just really tried to practice self-care. Now, I didn't go to the support group, but I had all these things kind of, set up around me to where if I needed anything at any given time, I would be able to access all those things. But I just, other than doing the basic things for myself, it was like, I wasn't caring for myself the way that I needed to. And it was just, then I started to feel like really bad. I felt guilty, because I'm like, I waited for this for 12 years. And here I am, so upset. And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, geez, like, can I get a break? And so so I really did a lot of praying, and just a lot of, going into the bathroom and soaking in the tub, or, listening, to some calming music, or doing whatever I could, to take care of myself. And really, letting go of the reins with Gabe a lot really helped, like with my family living close, living about 15 minutes away from us. And then my mom works at the same hospital I work at as well. We're in the same department. And so we don't stay that far, so she would literally be able to come on her lunch break, and she'd be like, go take a shower, or, or she'd be like, did you eat today, kind of thing. And so that, was a really difficult thing. I think what helped me ultimately was getting back to work, and being able to, have people around, and all those things. And there are still times where, I still might feel a little down here and there, but it's really about, also just being able to be self-aware and watching yourself, because there are extreme cases of postpartum depression of where, the mom wants to, to hurt themselves or their child, and I thank God that wasn't me, but, that those are realistic things. And so I would just say, definitely, take care of yourself, because you're no good to your child or to your partner if you don't take care of yourself. And you have to know what works for you, and you have to be willing, to step out and ask for help and not worry about it being seen as a weakness, because there's nothing weak about being brave enough to say I'm not okay. It is totally okay to not be okay.
Right.
It's okay to feel your emotions and experience those things.
Right.
What's important is that you don't stay there. What's important is that you still have hope, and that you know that you can dust yourself off and get back up again. But it's totally okay not to be okay. And to be able to tell people that, that's a brave thing. And I really try to, to say that to people a lot, because I'm a very sensitive person. I'm very soft-hearted. And so when I was younger, I got picked on a lot about it. They used to call me a crybaby and things like that, and now I realize, I'm like, really, like for me, that's just the way that I express my emotions. Yeah, I'm gonna cry at the drop of a hat. You take me to a movie, we cry. So it just is what it is. My husband already knows. He's got the tissue, all that stuff. When I stand up to share something I'm thankful for, the pastor has the tissue right here. But it's, being able to recognize, the strength in your weaknesses, I think is very, very important.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I mean, you just said, a whole lot of powerful things. And I think it's great that you're willing to share, because I think so many women feel, who have dealt with postpartum depression, who are dealing with it, may feel ashamed or feel like, oh my gosh, like you said, like I've been waiting for this baby, or this is such a blessing. But at the same time, I'm like, about it. They have, some ill feelings, about being a new mom. And it's a big adjustment. Like you have somebody else in your life, besides your partner, that you're now responsible for, who is also demanding your time, your energy. So, I mean, all of that, it's a huge, life-changing, event that just happened. So like you said, your body is getting adjusted, and then you also have to get adjusted, mentally, emotionally, all of that as well too. So it's a huge process. And so I'm glad that you had a support system and also reached out to people who are willing to support you during that time, and allowed you, to feel the way that you were feeling, but then also, help you to see, the brighter side of the situation, and then condemn you for it. Because I think a lot of times people are afraid to share how they feel, because they're afraid that they're going to be judged, and, people are going to look at them like, oh my gosh, you should be happy to be a mom. You know how many women are praying to be a mom? All these different types of things. It's like, look, it's a lot that goes on with this, with a mom. So I'm glad that you're willing, to share that struggle. And so I hope that to the new moms, or the women who have, dealt with this, that will be an encouragement for them, so they know they don't have to be ashamed, and that they're not the only one who's dealing with it, or who has dealt with it. So thank you, girl. Kudos. Oh my gosh. And thank you to your support system, because that's important to have.
Oh, yeah.
To have that, unfortunately, but I'm so grateful that God allows you to have the support system. And so, with that being said, like, what are some of the lessons that you've learned, as a new mother?
So definitely, so Gabriel, that's his name, Gabriel, has taught me a lot about myself, in the sense that, it's kind of like you never know. I heard a quote once that says, you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have.
Right.
And it's so true, in the sense that, I never knew that I could literally have a 30-minute nap all night and go to work and sit at a desk now, because I've been in this position that I'm in now for 2 years, but before that I was a nursing assistant on the floor. So, you're moving around and stuff like that. And so now I sit at a desk, and, and just to be able to function the way that I am, I never knew that I would be able to, multitask the way that I have, and really, he taught me how to be kind to myself. And that's the thing. As women, what I've recognized, as women in general, a lot of times we don't know how to do that. And it's because we are so, we're so family minded, whether we have kids or not, we're nurturers at heart. So we want to help everyone. We want to try to do this and that, and we're good at it. And so a lot of times what happens is, you're so good at all these things that the people around you sometimes forget, like, oh, like, I know she can do this like the back of her hand, but like, let me go over here and help her, kind of thing. And so he taught me a lot about that, and about about going to my husband and saying, like, hey, why don't you give him his bath tonight? Now of course, my husband's like, I don't want to drown him. So, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's important. You don't do that. But it's also important not to fill the tub up, and also about partnership, because, when you're looking at this child, that you're responsible for, you start thinking about the world that they're going to operate in. And so one important thing that me and my husband talked about before Gabriel came was the fact that we were going to give him back to God, because he's only leased to us. So we're here, to, on earth, guide him, teach him about God, teach him about having a relationship with God, and send him on his way so he can spread his wings, grow up, leave and cleave, get out the house, all that type of stuff. So, and so that's the thing that I had in my head from the beginning, like, this is my little boy. So at some point, it's very possible, unless God has called him to a life of singleness, he's going to find a wife. So, Whitney, get it together, and so that's something, seriously, like, that's something that I seriously think about, because that's a struggle. I can see that, even now, when you've birthed someone and you've taken care of them and all of that stuff. And it also teaches me about, balance as well. When you start thinking about, as you can see, I'm an African-American woman. So you start thinking about the conversations that I'm going to have with my son as a Black man in America. And what do you do if you get stopped by the police? And what do you do in this situation? And how do you, operate? How do you handle yourself? What's the proper way to shake a hand? Make sure that you maintain eye contact, and that you're respectful at all times. This is how you treat a woman. No means no. All of those types of things, and so you think about those things as well. And so, so I look at it as lessons, because we're as humans, we're all continuously growing and evolving and things like that. And it teaches you to adapt, because, with a newborn, you don't know if you're going to be able to go check the mail today, or if you're going to get a shower tomorrow, so you're just kind of rolling with the punches there. And, like, for me, I'm natural. And so normally I have a hair regimen, but I kept my hair in like braids and stuff like that, because I was like, Lord knows, it takes me about 3 hours to my hair when I have to wash it. So, so it's just, a learning experience.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Girl, you got me cracking up. But oh my gosh, it's so true. And I'm glad that you're able to see that everything, about being a new mom is an experience, opportunity for you to learn and for you to grow as well, as a mom and also as a person in general. And so I thank you so much for being able to share the lessons that you learned. But I swear, girl, I'm like, all right, Sequoia, be professional, but I wanted to just bust off. I'm like, girl, you better tell it. So
hey, you got to be real about it.
Absolutely. And I'm glad for your realness, because I'm pretty sure a lot of moms is like, yes, girl, tell them. You're going to 30-minute naps, and then we got to go to work. So thank you so much for that. And so I just want to ask you, what advice do you have, for new moms and also new couples who are parents as well?
So for the new moms, I would say, um, definitely, I would say, honestly, motherhood starts when you get pregnant. Because while the child is not out in the world yet, your body is used as their immune system, as their food, as their protection. And so I would say do your research and just make sure you do what's best for you. Now, that doesn't mean, some women, I've heard this, it wasn't me, but some women have cravings of like, eating dirt and stuff like that. And that means that that their body is lacking in some kind of mineral or some kind of vitamin. And so, definitely, go to your doctor's appointments and stuff like that. But, you've got to be true to yourself and walk in your truth. And you've got to be okay with doing that, regardless of what people are going to say, and how people are going to feel. Because people, nowadays or any day, they can be so easily offended, and they want you to be so politically correct, and all that stuff that sometimes we can feel timid. We can feel like, I don't want to say that because I don't know how they're going to feel about it, kind of thing. And you've got to be okay with being selfish. Because until your child is able to defend themselves and do things for themselves and be out in the world, you're their first line of defense, especially, while you're pregnant, especially as a new mom, nursing and taking care of your child and all that stuff. And so I would say, go ahead and figure out what your boundaries are and make sure you're going to stick to them, because the point of having a boundary, is to set them and so have everybody else on the other side of it. And so make sure you're not relaxing the boundaries and stuff like that, because then there's no point. And communication, go ahead and communicate to those around you the things that you're going to expect, because I will tell you this, labor and delivery is stressful, regardless of how joyful the occasion is, as well as, being a new mom, it's stressful. There's good stress and there's bad stress. It's all stress. And so going ahead and letting them know beforehand the things that you expect out of them, or what you expect to go on with your child or not go on with your child, go ahead and let them know beforehand, because when you're in those stressful moments, you're not as inclined to be as nice, so and communicate with your partner, with your spouse, and let them know, like, this is what I think I'm going to need. This is what I expect the boundaries to be, so that you can be a united front. So it's not, you saying this, but, they're making it obvious that they don't agree with that, or whatever the case is. Go ahead and have those conversations and have plans in place. I'm a big planner, but, have plans in place and backup plans in place, so that when those circumstances come, you're not just kind of feeling, kind of out there, you know, floating without like a tether. And just, and as far as couples is concerned, I would say, make sure that the same way that you cherish that little baby, and the same way that you use gentle hands and you cradle them and stuff like that, that's what you're doing with your relationship. So that way you are continuing to nurture your foundation. You're continuing to make sure that you are adhering to your vows, and you're continuing to care for that other person who is your support system, but that you're leaning on each other. And communication is key, and so is honesty. And making sure you communicate all those things beforehand. Now, it's not necessarily that you're going to be able to sit down and figure everything out, but as long as you keep the lines of communication open, it makes it easy to kind of go back and be like, I said this, but, I think this might work better, kind of thing. And like I said, self-care is definitely important. What I did when I was on maternity leave and my husband was back at work, thank goodness he was able to take 2 weeks off, but I told him, I said, this is going to operate like a job. I said, so at my job, I get 2 15-minute breaks and a lunch. I said, so when you get home, I'm going to take a 30-minute break. And then later in the night, I'm going to take a 30-minute break, just to allow yourself to have time away to kind of regroup and refresh yourself. And also, if you are at home for your maternity leave, or even if you are, are a stay-at-home mom, get out in the sunlight. You
Yeah.
know, make sure you're out, you know, in fresh air and things like that, you know. And the doctor told me in the hospital, he was like, you can take your son to the park today. This was like the day we were going to leave, you know, the hospital. He was like, you can take your son to the park today. Outside does not have germs. He was like, people have germs, you
Right.
know. And so, I wouldn't, you know, advise you to go into a crowd, but, you know, he was like, you know, to get him out, put him in sunlight, you know, and that allows you to be out as well. And so, yeah, I would say definitely communication, um, boundaries, and self-care.
Yes. All right. Y'all heard it to the new moms and the new parents out there. All right. She done gave y'all all the tips. Well, not all the tips. I'm pretty sure, look, it's a whole lot. But she gave y'all
Oh,
some
yeah.
great tips to start off now. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Whitney, for coming on and being able to share your heart, share your experience, being, like you said before, real about it. So we're not, you know, having these, you know, a bed of roses eyes looking through. It's like, oh, motherhood is so glorious.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute. Look, this is a whole can of worms here. But it is a beautiful thing, and it's truly a blessing, you know, to have the opportunity to be a mother, whether you give birth to a child naturally or through adoption or however, you know, God allows, you know, the child to come into your life. But it's a beautiful thing. And so I just thank you so much for being one to share. And so can you share with our viewers, you know, how they can stay in contact with you? Because I'm like, girl, I got questions, more questions I'm going to ask you off this video. So can you share with them how they can stay in contact with you, whether by email or your social media?
Yes, so my email is Whitney Smith, the numbers 525 at gmail.com. And I am on Facebook as Whitney Smith-Keith.
All right. And so, oh my gosh, like my girl, she done did it, y'all. This is like her first video interview for the magazine. So she's done a wonderful and awesome job. And so thank you again for tuning in. And I am Sequoia T. Gilliard, and you can check me out on all social media platforms from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Sequoia T. Gilliard. And if you want to email me, just hit me up at sequoia@rejoicinghope.com. So thank you again, and you all have a blessed day. Bye.
Bye.